morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Auto World. I'm Jamie Butters, Executive Editor of Automotive News and host of the Daily Drive podcast. Welcome to this Automotive News live chat from the Newlab at Ford's Michigan Central campus. This is the place where Ford is like a curating landlord of sorts for startups. Some, but not all, focused on mobility and whatever the auto industry may come to be called in the future. It was an epic restoration. The place had been unused, at least for proper economic activity, since 1988. It was totally restored at a cost of about $950 million over the past 6 years or so. It was a spectacular party to reopen the station. It started with Diana Ross and it ended with Jack White and Eminem. Utterly frabjous celebration of Detroit's rebirth, kind of a capstone after the city's bankruptcy in 2013. And of course, it couldn't have happened without the leadership and commitment of Bill Ford, the executive chair of Ford Motor Company. We'll see in the future decades how history judges him, but this redevelopment may be among his greatest achievements. So what does all this mean to the auto industry? Well, yeah, there's the strategic investment by Ford and whether it was the wisest form of real estate spending. But here's the thing, this is part of the Automotive News Congress, which is just next week. Ford is our presenting sponsor this year. As such, they're providing some cool experiences for the people who come to the Congress this year. They can come tour the Michigan Central Station with a docent. My wife and I came down here one weekend, and it's amazing what you can learn just looking around by yourself, reading the placards. But I'm sure, like at any museum, a good docent will really bring it to life. There's some other Ford/Congress stuff we can talk about later, but I don't want to go any further without introducing my colleague, Michael Martinez, who covers Ford. Mike, thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And we're joined today by our very special guest, the COO of Michigan Central Station, Carolina Pluszczynski. Carolina, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to have a great conversation today, and we want you in the audience to be a part of it. Say hi in the chat and tell us where you are. It's always fun to see the breadth of our audience. But even better, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get you an answer. To start us off, Carolina, how many Ford people are here now?
Well, Michigan Central is more than just a building, right? We're about a 30-acre technology hub, technology and innovation hub. So we spread out a little bit. Ford has been down in Detroit for since 2017. So we have the factory, which is right down the street, which is our Ford Pro team, which is customer-facing, innovative team at Ford, and they take up that residence. And when we went down to when they came to Detroit, it was for the same purpose. It was, how do you get people out of their continual workplace to think differently? How does a space inspire innovation? And so that still continued to be the theme of what we're doing here. So in this building is our startup engine. There's not many Ford people at all that are residents here, but they use the space because it's a space where they can come and collaborate with startups, collaborate with others. But in the train station, that's where we'll see a couple of Ford floors.
As soon as next month.
Next month, October 8th is when the move-in date is.
Exciting.
So let's talk a little bit about this building we're in right now. You said it's an incubator for startups. I think you guys surpassed the 100 startup threshold a few months back. Tell us a little bit about what this building entails.
Yeah, so this building opened in April of 23. We started, as you curate the ecosystem, we started with the startups because that's what's going to bring everybody else here. And so as we built this building, we actually looked at what are the resources that startups need? What would make them not work in their garage and come to this building every single day? And so we have built out a 14,000 square foot lab space where they can build prototypes, hard tech prototypes from start to finish. We have a manufacturing assembly space in the basement because once you build your first prototype, you may need to do a few more. And how do you actually do that in the basement space? We have policies in place with the city of Detroit. We have a longstanding partnership with the state and the city that have allowed us to do things like a 2 mile square area around us that's called the Transportation Innovation Zone. It allows the solutions and the technologies that are developed here to be able to pilot in the real world streets. It also allows a fast tracking permitting process because in the city, I think our first startup took 6 months to get a permit, and we were able to then work with the city to have like a 48-hour turnaround. which gives them the opportunity to do that. We have an aerial space. So we have been working with the state of Michigan that gives us about 3 miles around the train station. Magnificently tall building that gives you a line of sight out for about 3 miles. And so we are going to do some of the first drone piloting in an urban context out of that, out of the train station.
So I believe one of the pilots, if I'm not mistaken, around this area is a charging road that will charge your EV as you go across it. I'm wondering if maybe that's a standout in the first year and a half you guys have been open. Are there any other standout startups that have left the building? Because that's really the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the EV charging road for a bit because
Sure.
it's exciting. It's a piece of infrastructure that, again, enables like nobody else has. And how do we bring the startups here? And that piece of road is block, right? It's not very long, but what it's allowed us to do is startups to come and test their technology on that road. And right now they're looking at getting a level 2 charge while you're on that piece of road. And the insights that gives you is that, we necessarily don't need all of our roads to have that electric inductive charging in it, but you do need to have it periodically around an area so that you can maintain a charge on an EV for a longer term. And that's really important to fleets. So we see the attraction of not just the startup that has the inductive charging, but the companies that want to come and test their products on there. And so to your point, we have 116 startups right now here. We have startups that have grown out of this building. We have a company called Grounded. They were two guys that came from SpaceX that had an idea for a electric RV, basically, and modular interior of it. They started actually in the parking lot because our building wasn't even open yet, building those modular pieces, and have grown out to another building that we have, which is about 12,000 square feet. Their sales are through the roof and they're doing well. We have another company that I'll mention they actually reached out on LinkedIn. They were from Norway and they were like, we think we want to expand to where you are. 2 people came over when we opened in April of 23, and they now are grown. They have about 15 employees there. They have sold to all of the major OEMs and really doing well as a company.
Let me jump in. We have a question from the audience wondering if there are requirements for startups to take up residency here. Do they have to have a Detroit or Michigan, headquarters? Or I guess if they're coming here, then maybe that becomes their headquarters.
Right. No, there's no requirement on being from Detroit. We actually have about 50% of our companies are from Detroit, but the others are from around the world. But there is an application process. Newlab operates this facility for us, and they are curating the startup ecosystem. So there's an application form on our website, michigancentral.com, where you're able to actually go and enter an application to take a membership here.
Cool.
So that 50% interesting because that means half are not from here. And I think that's really the point of this entire campus, whether it's this building or the train station, is to attract talent, attract startups, attract people to the state. I'm wondering what you've heard from some of these guys that aren't from around here, why they chose Newlab, why they are choosing this campus to set up their operations.
Yeah, I think, I think it's hard to bring people here, right? We didn't have this startup ecosystem. We're not known for that. And so we're actually curating it kind of from scratch. And I'll use that word curating because we're trying to make sure that we have not only the right companies here, but we have the resources that can enable them to grow and to do well. And so I think companies are like I mentioned, the policy, the transportation innovation zone, the fact that you can get a permit quickly. How do we help having the resources that help them overcome the challenges that they would see on a day-to-day basis is really what the attraction is here. Also access to first customers. And that's why the corporates are so important, right? I think earlier when we were talking, I was mentioning that this is the startup ecosystem. And as we build out the train station, it's really important to have the corporates here as well. And so we'll be talking about, we'll be offering a product called the Michigan Central membership, where you may not have to have full tenancy in the building, but it allows you to participate in this ecosystem. And we can curate those introductions with the right companies, with the right startups, because it's important for them.
And you guys have VCs here too, right?
Yeah.
What advantage does that provide, having them right here in this space?
So we have about 21 VCs. So we call the companies, we call networked companies, right? 20 of them, 20 or 21 of them are VCs. Access to the access to the VCs, the access to the capital, all very important for the startups.
Well, it seems like the whole ecosystem, right? Because if you're a VC, you want to be able to check
Sure.
out these startups and what they're working on, what their habits are, before you put too much money into them.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's why I use the word curate, because these are about how do you get the right stakeholders in this place that actually kicks off that flywheel.
Do you see some of these guys that are in this building eventually transitioning to the train station and taking up residence there?
Yeah. Once you get to a certain level here, like size of your company, your culture starts changing. You start getting your own culture, and that would impact the entire building. And so at that point, we would actually help them find other places. It may be in the train station. It may be in other locations. We have a company that we're helping find some manufacturing space that they need. And so there's an opportunity to actually expand into the Detroit area with these companies as they grow.
Is there, I mean, automatically you think of tech startups, you think Silicon Valley to a certain extent. Is that the main rival where we're trying to pull these guys away from? It's between us and them, or who else, what areas of the country are we competing with?
I think it's Austin. I think it's Atlanta. I think there's a number of pockets around there that really as we build out this tech hub, there's some decisions to make on proximity and where you want to be in terms of your customer base. And so, yeah, I mean, Silicon Valley is, but I don't know if we'd ever compete with Silicon Valley, right?
Gotcha.
Another question from the audience is, does Ford leadership keep an eye on the startups and the VCs? Do they make a periodic review to see if there's something they want to invest in or partner with or anything like that?
Yeah, it's more of what I will say, it's more of us understanding kind of the Ford business and other businesses and say who we think might be a good match and how do we pull those folks in. Because otherwise I think it's too hard out of their day-to-day job. But I will say that Bill Ford comes down here regularly. He walks around and talks to the startups. I mean, this was his vision, is to create this open platform where this kind of collaboration can happen.
Well, he's a VC himself, basically, right? He loves to invest in startups in mobility space, especially. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could take a step back and talk about the construction, not only of this building, but of the train station as well. Those local to Michigan and Detroit will know the poor state these buildings were in coming into Ford purchasing them. Can you walk me through those years? Do you have any memories or anecdotes you could share about the construction and the development of this building or the train station?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Dearborn. I've lived in the area my whole life, and so I know what these buildings were like too, and I know the stories about these buildings. So it was a little creepy coming in them at first because they were scary, right, as you walked through them. But the train station has been magnificent. I think you uncover things like a 60,000 square foot basement that wasn't on anybody's plans and nobody ever knew it existed. And so what do you do with that kind of thing? We walked that building every day, no heat. In the summer, no air. It was in rough condition. By time the first year we pumped out all of the water, I think there was like 5 Olympic-sized pools of water that had to come out of the basement. And you could physically watch the building dry out. The color of the outside of the building changed as it got a lot lighter because, the dampness was all going away.
Wow.
And so as that happened, you uncovered other things. There was a bottle that we found in the wall that 2 of the workers signed their name on a piece of wax paper, and it was from 1913, and they put their names on it and put it in the plaster walls. The little stories like that. We were in the construction trailer, and we'd get knocks on the door where they would deliver this magnificent ornamental door overhead that was made of wood, and I don't even know how they carried it there because it was so heavy, but they were keeping it. They were safekeeping these parts and pieces of this building because it meant something. It meant something so valuable to the city and to individual people. And so tons of stories like that.
Well, and I'm sure a lot of the folks who go on the tour will see and the train station, the exquisite attention to detail that the company paid in restoring it. I know there's a story about how they had to go find the original quarry, the original limestone, to repair some of the facades of the building itself. Probably 10, 20 of those kind of stories.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the decisions that went into making sure that everything was almost to a T of what that building used to be?
Yeah, I think well, we had a lot of great partners that helped us with that restoration, but there were decisions on where we would have to invest to actually do those things, where we could introduce new materials and technologies to help us, because that craftsmanship's hard to find. So the query that you were talking about, we were able to find a very large stone that we had a craftsman in Flint, Michigan, that took 400 plus hours to hand carve one of the capitals from the outside of the building. And that allowed us then to take molds that we were able then to create the pieces that were missing on the other capitals. So while you were able to, I don't think we could have replaced all of the capitals that way. By having that one, it gave us that opportunity. There was the detailed around the ironwork windows inside the station. We had a few pieces that gave us what it looked like, and we had pictures, and so we were to engage Ford's advanced manufacturing team to actually 3D print those. And so where we could use different materials and where we could use the technology to help us do that restoration to that level of detail, we took advantage of those opportunities.
How did the pandemic affect construction, or did it? Because it seems like for the most part, you guys kept things on track.
Yeah. When I came onto the project, it was 3 days before we shut down for the pandemic. And so trying to build a team remotely and really keep that momentum going was hard. And while the company was shut down, the Ford Motor Company had shut down for a number of weeks to try to determine how we were going to move forward. We worked with our partners and put protocols in place, safety protocols. I think we were shut down for the 6 weeks. And when we opened up, we again had 500 workers between that building, the train station, and this building every single day. They would get tested, temperature checked, came into the building. We were able to separate enough of the workers because there were so many floors that we didn't skip a beat.
That's excellent.
Truly remarkable.
I'm wondering, we hear from a lot of our readers from the Ford side. Say, okay, maybe somebody who's not from Michigan, how much of a good idea is it that they're spending all this money on a train station in Detroit on this campus? How would you answer that question? Why is it important?
I'm gonna actually, I was in a presentation the other day and Bill Ford was talking, and his vision, thinking about the future of mobility and the future of transportation and what the auto industry, the changes that the auto industry has to go through, is really the driver. And what he saw was that one, the auto industry was really insular. We do innovation with ourselves, and two, he thought the problems of the future are so hard. When you think about mobility and you think about transportation, that not one company is going to be able to solve them by themselves. He also talked a lot about the advancements of the technology that needs to happen. And so his vision was creating this 30-acre campus that one was this open platform so we could bring folks together to work on these problems. And as you can see, right, startups are coming up with the ideas and testing solutions so rapidly, right? It was to create that open platform and to create a place that you could convene the smartest, engineers, stakeholders, startups, innovators, government, together, corporates, industry partners together, and really with the academics. And how do we actually not cede the future of innovation to anybody else, and we keep that in Detroit? And that's working. It seems to be working. Knock on wood. Give me my table.
I'm wondering, you guys opened up after that big concert that Jamie mentioned. You opened up the station to tours throughout the summer on the weekends. Did it surprise you, the reaction you received from the public? And do you have any anecdotes you could share about folks that did come through?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I mean we had 170,000 people come through Michigan Central over the summer, and we were only open on weekends. We were open on Fridays and Saturdays. The lines sometimes were around the building, and the way we brought people into the building, there was like a couple-minute video in in the women's waiting room, and then the doors opened, and you got to walk into the grand hall. And so for the first couple of weeks, I volunteered to be one of the greeters as you walk in there, because this has been a project that I've been on for 6 years, and I wanted to see people's reaction because I know how much it meant to me. And you have conversations with everybody, their reactions, the tears, the stories. Someone's uncle went to war. They met their dad there for the first time because he was gone for so long. People migrating to this area. And so the team had to ask me to stop because I was talking too long to people and the line was getting longer. And but those were amazing moments. Because you could see why this is so important to the city.
Gotcha. I know you guys recently made an announcement about the first retail tenant coming. Wonder if you could walk me through as much as you can what's next in terms of the rest of this year and beyond, because you guys still are working on the train station.
Yeah,
correct?
so architecturally, that was the opening, right? It was the architecture view. Now we are building out the internal spaces. So we'll have tenants starting to move in. Well, we actually have our first tenant in there. It's the boys. It's the Google Code Next. We have a whole youth floor of training. And so that is still being worked on, but we have kids going into that building every day after school, learning how to code. And then we will have the Ford tenants move in, and there's a couple other tenants in the pipeline. So you'll see the tower start filling up quickly. On the main floor, it's a tough situation on the main floor. We are doing a significant amount of events. We had our first 1,200 person event there this past weekend, learning a lot about acoustics and movement and food delivery, all of that. And then in the late fall, October-ish, the first tenant will move in, the donut shop, the Yellow Light, which was just announced. And then there'll be kind of like a sundry store where we'll have merchandise and retail, etc. And as we move through that floor, we're talking about activations, right? Early activations. We're going to do pop-ups. We're not putting permanent things in because we still have to look at, we were open on weekends and got 170,000 people, but if you're open every day, what's that traffic flow? What are the types of things that we need to have there? And so we're going to try some things, learn, and before we do the permanent installations.
And for the public, sure they can walk on that main floor, go to the donut shop, see some different things. What will their access be?
So there will be portions of it that we'll have to close off because we're still building, but you can come in, there'll be some seating, you can have some coffee and donuts, and as we open other things, we'll make that access a little bit bigger.
You mentioned events. There's going to be a big one tomorrow, Automotive Hall of Fame celebration, and Bill Ford is among the honorees. So very exciting and appropriate place to have an event.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
We are almost out of time. I do want to make sure to let the audience know about a few things going on at Automotive News. We have a new awards program. It's a collaboration with our outstanding colleagues at Ad Age. It's called the Global Automotive Marketing Awards. GAMAs, if you will. GAMAs will recognize groundbreaking campaigns that drive business growth and make a substantial and measurable impact for automakers, mobility providers like the startups here, potentially, and yes, dealers too. You can see all the details at autonews.com/auto awards. The deadline is 5 p.m. on September 23rd. That's Monday. You've all been warned. Plus Monday is when we kick off the Automotive News Congress. That's the 23rd and 24th. Actually, if you aren't already booked for the dinner on Monday, I think it's too late. It's a very hot ticket. We'll be honoring our Rising Stars class and hearing from Ford CEO Jim Farley, his thoughts on leadership and career development. You can still get into the main Congress Day when we'll have the media discussions about the state of the industry. Speakers include General Motors President of Global Markets, Rory Harvey, VW of America CEO Pablo Deci, NADA President Mike Stanton, and of course Ford Model E COO Maran Jaya. We'll be talking about electrification and software-defined vehicles, the evolution of auto retail, the competitive threat from China, and what's at stake for the industry in the presidential election. That's all out at M1 in Pontiac. We're going to have some Ford EVs out there. Yes, you can drive them on the closed track. That's super cool. It's all next week, one of the biggest events of the year. Really looking forward to it. So, Mike, do you have one final question?
Yeah, I'd ask a lot of attention on the train station for what it will be in the future. Will we ever see trains going through the train station again?
I don't think that's our decision, but I can say that there are some conversations going on with Amtrak. They're talking about bringing passenger rail back. It would, there's tracks still behind our station, and we would obviously accommodate that if that was happening.
Old mobility to go with some new mobility.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. All right, that will do it for today. Thanks to our production team, Rudy Short, Dean Storm, Tiara Riddick, Terry Kostrowski, Marissa Marcinkowski, Tom Carl, and Jake Neer. Special thank you to our guest, Carolina Pluszczynski, Chief Operating Officer at Michigan Central Station. We really appreciate your time and insight. That was great.
Thank you for having me.
For Michael Martinez and everyone here at Automotive News, I'm Jamie Butters. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.